As dawn broke over a world teetering on the brink of nuclear annihilation, young Lieutenant Jackson Reed stood watch aboard the USS Monarch in the quarantine line around Cuba, his eyes scanning radar screens and listening intently for sonar pings. The gentle rocking motion of their steel-clad vessel swayed lazily on calm seas as golden sunlight danced over azure waters reflective enough to make one forget momentarily that they stood in a geopolitical theater where every move could tip history off its axis into catastrophe. Jackson had been just out of training when he heard about the discovery at sea Soviet nuclear missile sites camouflaged among Cuba's dense jungles and mountainous terrain, an act that President Kennedy would soon demand be met with a naval blockade to prevent further escalation into war. In those days, Jackson was still green behind his ears, but had always possessed an unwavering sense of duty. He now understood it more deeply than ever before as the weight of potential global destruction hung palpable in the air between men and nations. Today's silence aboard Monarch held a stark contrast to its crew members, many seasoned veterans with war-hardened faces that spoke volumes beyond their calm exteriors, an understanding born from years of perilous service at sea, where every sound might be the harbinger of disaster. Jackson felt each sonar ping reverberate through his body as if it were a heartbeat, one he now shared with an unseen adversary, whose presence lurked below in unfathomable depths, a submarine cloaked by secrecy and shadowed from the prying eyes of reconnaissance. Jackson's gaze shifted to his commanding officer, who stood as firmly at attention, though a crease upon her brow betrayed an unspoken worry that matched Jackson's own thoughts or silent acknowledgement between two young officers about how close humanity had come before the world leaders intervened with diplomacy and military might. They were guardians of peace in their way, each ping on sonar a note within nature's symphony now disrupted by mankind's fearsome discord, or harsh reminder that beneath them was an ocean capable of erasing borders, but not the imminent threat to existence should buttons be pressed without forethought. "Keep your eyes peeled," his captain had said earlier, a single sentence laden with meaning beyond its literal intent as they passed over another vessel in their quarantine formation known seemingly innocuous until history would prove otherwise. "Remember the lessons of war. Miscalculation is death." Jackson's thoughts were interrupted by an incoming ping from sonar, a sound that seemed to hold dominion even within its own echoes, like waves breaking upon distant shores or pulse signaling movement below where water and secrets converged. The crew stood alert as the USS Monarch maintained their course along Kennedy's invisible barrier stretched out across open waters. Any Soviet vessel encroaching into this buffer was a potential spark in dry kindling, an invitation for missteps to ignite fires not easily quenched by diplomats or armies. As the ship's engines hummed steadily against ocean currents and time itself seemed as malleable as clay beneath his boots on deck during drills, Jackson felt a connection with history, a thread woven from past tensions that had once made this same world tremble before atomic shadows. And now here he stood in the present, where sonar waves whispered tales of suspicion and surveillance through depths unseen to eyes, but not unfelt by souls like his, who bore witness daily to humanity's capacity for destruction as much as its penchant for survival. Today he mused softly in a voice meant only for himself, or perhaps the universe listening intently between breath and beat of heart. A young officer at war with silence itself. "We are but custodians on this precipice, where history's course is decided not by might nor right alone, but also respect, understanding that to err here was folly writ large upon every horizon." Jackson Reed remained vigilant aboard USS Monarch, his youthful face cast against the backdrop of an epochal moment when world powers hovered on razor's edge, an era where each movement held weight beyond measure, and even a ship's steady course was but one note in humanity's harrowing symphony. Jackson's thoughts drifted backward through decades when he envisioned himself amidst a world gripped by fear and suspicion following World War I, a time where humanity's quest for power had led them astray to wielding nuclear might against one another, the memory of devastation still fresh in his mind. He could almost hear echoes from that era when nations were divided not just across lines drawn on maps, but with ideologies so starkly different they seemed as foreign and hostile as distant galaxies. The USS Monarch was an imposing symbol of American might, the latest testament to technological prowess or floating embodiment of deterrence designed to keep peace through strength, yet now navigating a sea that had become both literal and metaphorical for surveillance in this new atomic age. Jackson couldn't help but marvel at how times changed, from the days where he would have been hailed as hero upon returning home after his service. Instead of cheers filling the night air with prideful boasts about valor on foreign shores and battles fought for freedom, a notion that seemed almost quaint in its simplicity to someone who had seen much more complex truths. As he sat, Jackson considered how surveillance technology like sonar now served as both protectorate sentinel of waters once patrolled by sailors on horseback, and a tool used for spying upon one another, a double-edged sword that could serve to maintain peace or escalate tensions. The ocean's depth had become home not just to mysteries unexplored, but also secrets zealously guarded, where echoes of submerged craft remained silent yet omnipresent threats in the abyss below. Sonar waves whispering stories that were never heard and felt by human ears alone. On deck during drills, he recalled feeling as if his boots could shape history itself, ground firm beneath him, while engines hummed steadily against ocean currents and time seemed malleable like clay in the hands of those who had shaped it before this very moment, when destiny's threads were so precariously tangled. Jackson wondered about what future historians would make of their current situation, delicate balance that kept humanity from plunging into nuclear devastation, and how they might judge the decisions made in these uncertain times, where every action had profound implications for generations to come. And now here he stood at present's precipice, as custodians of peace or young officer wrestling with his duty amidst this epochal juncture, understanding that respect and careful consideration were not just virtues, but necessities in the face of potential disaster should missteps be made. His thoughts turned to a quote he had once read by an esteemed captain from another era: "In times when every wave could carry us toward uncharted depths or into perilous shallows, let our course always reflect honor and wisdom." The USS Monarch's crew remained vigilant as they patrolled through night skies punctuated by silent stars. Jackson felt the weight of those words resonating within him, knowledge that their actions above zero ard these steel-clad walls could either contribute to a legacy remembered for peace or one condemned to history's darkest chapters. As his eyes traced over lines from an old sea shanty, he felt the same camaraderie and brotherhood of sailors that seemed so vital in times past, or sense of shared purpose binding them together as they faced uncertainties ahead with a quiet resolve born not just out of duty but also deep-seated humanity. Jackson Reed understood now more than ever the importance of their mission, wherein every sonar ping and radar sweep was part of an intricate dance leading to either harmony or discord, a reflection upon his very soul as he wrestled with what it meant to be not just a guardian, but also a potential architect in this high-stakes game. As dawn's light began filtering into the horizon, Jackson Reed found himself looking out across waters that had borne witness to countless stories of human. As Jackson Reed gazed upon the horizon where dawn's gentle fingers were now beginning to paint hues of orange and pink across a canvas that had seen so much, he felt an intertwined sense of solemnity with hope, or duality as complex and layered as history itself. The USS Monarch was more than just his home. It was also the silent guardian upon these waters, where every movement could alter fates both near and distant. Today's patrol had been particularly arduous due to a recent intelligence report suggesting unrest in an area notorious for pious, a region that stretched as far back into memory as time on sea vessels did, without their anchors tethering them firmly ashore. The crew, hardened and resilient like the ship itself, which had been through countless storms, both literal and figurative, since her keel was first cut in 1967, vessel that now stood as an emblem of American might, yet also carried within its steel walls the humanity so essential to their purpose. Jackson, a man whose eyes mirrored depth beyond his years, with every glance towards life's horizon, and who had once played violin amidst stormy tempests on deck himself, now navigated not just waters, but complex moral seascapes that could easily capsize lesser spirits without the necessary fortitude of character. As Jackson steered through a particularly rough stretch, he found solace in revisiting an old shanty sung by his predecessors to steady their resolve during tumultuous times, or tradition which seemed almost like prayer as it echoed against metal and waves alike with every chord struck from the ship's own piano. In those moments of shared musicality, history felt alive within them all. Not just a record they read, but something palpably real that flowed through their veins in melody and rhyme, or song for sailors who had to face life and death choices with the grace befitting ancient mariners. Today, his role demanded more than mere vigilance. He was also a mediator between potential warfare at sea and peaceful coexistence on these shared waters where every ship's wake left ripples felt in distant ports, ripples that could grow into waves of consequence. The USS Monarch carried not only the weight of national security, but equally, if not more so, a responsibility to embody principles upon which their great nation was built: liberty and justice for all who sought shelter from tyranny's reach across oceans wide or narrow alike. The crew gathered around as Captain Miller briefed them on the day's tasks, an amphibious exercise designed not just to maintain readiness, but also foster unity among nations in these troubled times, where misinterpretation often led down paths of unwarranted hostility and suspicion, a path well trodden by history's footsteps. Jackson felt the calloused hands gripping his own with familiarity of unspoken promise that together they could navigate through adversity as one singular entity bound not only by duty but also shared dreams of peaceful tomorrows where skies held no fear and waters ran clear of strife or sorrow. In the midst of Exur 012, fighting to reconcile his respect for military traditions with a yearning for an era when might was right less often decided by cannons rather than by diplomats, Handshake Jackson found himself pondering about those uncharted depths or perilous shallows where their honor and wisdom would always steer them. The thought of his own son someday reflecting upon tales spun from the USS Monarch as chapters in a grander narrative he might be writing, a story to tell for generations come when drones had become relics on display, replaced by new guardians bearing no names, but only memories and legends of valor. As dawn broke into full daylight, bathing the world below them with its life-giving light, Jackson Reed felt not just as a captain aboard his steadfast vessel amidst her endless patrols. He was also an ambassador for human decency in a realm where often darkness reigned. The echoes of olden shanties lingered with him not only through their melodic lines, but the essence they encapsulated, that sailors were more than mere instruments to be wielded by commanders or nations. Rather, they were artisans in crafting a legacy. And as he steered his ship forward into tomorrow's unknown waters with hopeful eyes and steadfast hands, Jackson Reed knew this was not just about safeguarding the present, but also nurturing. Jackson Reed stood at his ship's helm as he gazed into the horizon, where sea met sky in a dance of azure and gold, much like an artist beholds their canvas before them, a mixture of apprehension mingling with resolve upon which could be sketched tales that would ripple through time. He was not just Captain Reed aboard his steadfast vessel. He had also become the guardian a nation leaned on, its conscience amidst turmoil and change. The USS Monarch, her name hummed in every sailor's voice like an old tune known too well to be forgotten, even when night descended upon them once more at sea. She cut through waves as though she were whispering secrets back into the ocean, her hull a testament of countless voyages, where humanity's will was tested, and often triumphed by Nagat Zero by Litty's hand rather than brute force alone. Jackson took solace in this thought. Today marked their longest patrol yet, since Jackson had been entrusted with the USS Monarch, her ghosts of steel as eternal companions to his spirit. The ship was like an elderly patriarch among peers. Every plank and rivet bore stories from decades past where she'd weathered storms that now seemed but ripples against a tempest's roar, a reminder that the true strength of humanity lay not within iron sinews or cannons, but in compassionate bonds forged between souls. Suddenly from below deck emerged young Illy Jackson to report on an encounter with foreign vessels earlier today. Tales wove themselves around every sailor's ear, as if they were being told by a seasoned storyteller, anecdotes of camaraderie, misunderstandings resolved not through conflict but conversation. These dialogues had become the lifeblood that sustained their morale and forged alliances where once there may have been warfare or distrust. An unspoken truth emerging as daylight wove into twilight: trust was humanity's most precious cargo, its rarest commodity. As night draped over the sea like a cloak of obsidian and silver threads intermingling to create patterns only discernible by those who believed in dreaming beyond themselves, Jackson felt an urge within him that reached far back into his lineage, compulsion towards peacemaking. His son Illy's laughter still echoed through the monarch's halls long after he had gone to bed. Their bond transcended mere blood relations and became a symbol of hope for peaceful coexistence amidst nations with histories fraught by strife or beacon guiding future generations towards harmony. Tonight, Jackson Reed looked upon the sea as one does an old friend, its vastness echoing his own thoughts about stewardship and legacy. The ocean whispered promises of tomorrow with every gentle wave that lapped against Monarch's keeler future, where sailors were revered not just for their bravery, but also as custodians who could navigate between the siler of greed-fueled wars to reach safe harbors. As he watched a flock of seabirds wheel above them, Jackson considered himself an unexpected ambassador amongst his crew, linked in this chain that stretched through generations and even into uncharted futures, where the world might remember him for more than tales spun by bards or chroniclers. The monarch's figurehead bore a striking resemblance to one of these seabirds, her wings poised as if she too were in flight, her silent sentinel against storms and strife with every plume-like feather that crowned the prow's head. It was then an old sailor approached him on deck. His weathered face spoke volumes of a life spent under sun, moon, and stars, navigating not just by compass, but also heart, a reminder to Jackson Reed how every choice he made aboard these waters could ripple outward like the wake left behind when Monarch glided through waves. The sailor shared stories of a time where conflicts seemed insurmountable, yet men found themselves bound together by common humanity, or thread that held them steadfast as they faced down adversaries, not with guns blazing but open hands extending friendship or aid in times dire. The very essence of diplomacy was born aboard these vessels and carried across seas to touch distant shores. As Jackson Reed settled into his quarters, he thought about how tales like Illy, as Jackson Reed closed his eyes and leaned back against the wooden spine of his quarters chair, a gentle breeze wafting through an open window carried him away to thoughts both grandiose and grounding. This was no ordinary man aboard. Monarch felt part of something larger. The sea had always been generous in its teachings. Each ebb and flow whispered lessons not just for navigators, but also about the essence of human spirit that echoes beyond time's expanse like ripples on water surfaces after a pebble is cast into stillness. A reflection Jackson Reed found most comforting. The following day dawned with clear skies and an air of anticipation for what lay ahead, both personally and professionally. The crew had assembled in the main deck amidst murmurs about rumors from distant lands that spoke to times when Monarch's name was synonymous not just with exploration, but also diplomacy or legacy, as much feared by enemies as revered among allies because of its capacity for both destruction and unity. Jackson Reed, the seasoned captain now at her helm after a lifetime spent in service to Monarch's many captains before him, knew well that each decision aboard these waters could alter fates. Likewise, he had come to understand how stories of humanity, of courage and compassion intertwined with power struggles, could shape the course history took. As Jackson regarded his crew through seasoned eyes, he saw in them not just men who shared a common purpose, but souls on an odyssey that could forever alter their world, as it did during those untold tales passed down by old sailors to eager young listeners aboard Monarch's decks. During one such night, when the moonlight spilled across endless waves, Jackson Reed gathered his men and spoke of times past where unity was forged not in conflict but through shared endeavor against common hardships, times that seemed distant to them now as they navigated waters foreign from their homeland. He recounted an age-old tale about a sailor who saved the captain's life, which had been passed down generations until even his great-grandson was told it by him himself. This act of camaraderie between man and man aboard Monarch became legendary because such bonds were rare in that era. Inspired by these stories of human connection at sea's heart, Jackson Reed decided to extend a hand not just as captain, but also mentor. His guidance would aim toward fostering trust among his diverse crew and beyond the ship's wooden confines into ports where Monarch might one day dock. He proposed that they adopt practices from their ancestors who engaged with foreign lands through cultural exchange, trade of knowledge rather than goods alone. This was diplomacy on open decks under Stalin. Skeezer novel approach to forging alliances in an age still shadowed by the specter of warfare and greed. As seasons shifted at sea, so too did Jackson Reed's crew learn from one another. Each man brought their unique heritage like threads woven into a greater narrative that stretched across continents, to intertwine with Monarch's own storied past. The ship itself became an emblem of unity or testament and legacy not just for herself, but also those who would come after. One fateful evening, as they rounded yet another capricious bend in their journey nearing lands unknown to both sailor and continent alike, a storm approached with silent malice that sought only chaos upon Monarch's steadfast former challenge Jackson Reed had faced before, but never thought he would confront again. As the tempest raged against them, every man aboard stood resolute. They were more than just sailors and captains now. Their shared resolve bonded a disparate crew into an indomitable force driven by unspoken understanding that life's perils might demand of each soul on board. In the heart of darkness, as thunder crackled like celestial forks across time, Jackson Reed found strength in his crew's unity, a reflection not only upon themselves, but also a reminder to future generations what it meant when people stood together beyond borders and divides that sought their separation. And even through the storm's wrath which threatened Monarch with ruinous fate, her figurehead of feathered wings remained steadfastly poised, as if guiding them not just across water, but also toward a new horizon where courage could lead to peace over warfare and understanding triumphant diplomacy born from hearts. As dawn approached after night's trial by tempestuous hands, the sun rose upon as dawn's first light touched their cheeks and painted a golden hue across Monarch's weathered timbers. Jackson Reed stood at her helm with weary yet firm hands gripping his oar in silent salute to those who had come before him. It was not merely the vessel he steered, but also an era where seas were untamed frontiers and men's fates intertwined like threads in a sailor's tale. The tempest that raged through night seemed less hostile now, as if it too knew there would be calm after chaos or truth Jackson Reed had always believed, but only recently lived to see manifest before his eyes. Within the belly of Monarch, amidst sails frayed and ropes strained from their vigilant dance with tempests past, lay a camaraderie born in adversity's harsh embrace. Tales woven into every plank she bore whispered histories not just on land, but also upon the waves. The sailors of Monarch's crew had been brought together by fate, or perhaps something greater, a spirit that bound them as one, where once they stood divided and at odds with each other's ways, yet now found kinship in shared strife against nature's furies, a brotherhood forged not just on the deck of any ship, but across oceans uncharted. In this newfound unity that had blossomed from necessity, there was an understanding among them own where every man's voice could find harmony and all hands were needed to tend Monarch's needs as a living artifact amongst mere machines. Their roles transcended beyond the call of duty into stewards for history itself. The feathered figurehead atop her prow, always an emblem of hope amidst despair during stormy nights, now seemed like more than just ornamentation, but rather guiding light toward a future where such solidarity could shape destinies with the gentle touch it had shown them this fateful dawn. As they navigated away from treacherous shores and into waters that promised safe passage once their course was set, Jackson Reed took solace in knowing his voyage would not be marked by conquest, but rather a testament to human spirit, her journey where the true prize lay within discovering lands of peace woven through compassionate encounters. The skies cleared and stars blinked back at them knowingly, as if sharing their stories with those who could interpret celestial patterns that once guided explorers before him. They were not just sailors, but also seekers yearning for understanding beyond the horizon's deceitful veil of danger. The storm had taught Jackson and his crew something immeasurable, revealing facets of themselves previously untouched by turmoil or revelation, that their bonds could be as relentless and enduring as the ocean itself. A realization now etched into Monarch's legacy, where every drop in water sang with memories. In unity, they had found resilience to face not just tempest's wrath, but also an era of change that awaited them on distant shores, a world hungry for tales of kinship and shared purpose rather than the spoils sought by conquerors past. On this morn, as Monarch cut through waters with renewed vigor under Reed's seasoned hand at her rudder's helm, each sail on deck hummed in tuneful anticipation for horizons yet unseen, a chorus of hope that resonated within the hearts of men and breathed life into their collective dream. The feathered figurehead remained a steady sentinel, as if its gaze had pierced through night's own darkness, reaching out to touch upon an era where nations might heal from wars unjustly waged in age Jackson Reed hoped his voyage could herald and for those that followed him. The sun ascended further with each passing moment, and as it broke free of the horizon's embrace, a warmth enveloped Monarch's crew. Not just physical relief from their nocturnal battle, but also an ethereal sense that they were embarking upon something transcendent. Their journey was now more than survival. It was about planting seeds of fraternity in soils far removed, where once hostile lands might one day grow flowers amidst the ruins left by strife and discord. A testament to human potential when driven not just by force but also by an unyielding desire for compassion. As Monarch's sails billowed with each gust of wind, Jackson Reed realized that this voyage was about more than discovery, as dawn painted its golden hues across a sky that had witnessed their nocturnal trials and tribulations. Monarch's crew stood on deck with faces touched by sleep yet filled with determination for what lay ahead. The sea was an ever-changing tapestry of blues deeper than the heart's own depths. It cradled them as they embarked upon a journey not just through waters, but across time and ideals, her vessel carrying hope amidst currents that had once been torn with conflict. Jackson Reed's eyes glistened with resolve beneath his captaincy's unspoken creed to mend the wounds of history as much as they charted their course through open waters, and in doing so heeded a silent pact between past voyages whispering tales that transcended mere survival. The crew's laughter rang out clear against the morning sea spray. It was not only relief to behold, but an affirmation of bonds forged through shared adversity and mutual reliance, their camaraderie untouched by prior strife, each man a link in humanity's chain reaching toward common ground. Reed's gaze wandered briefly across his diverse crew, young sailors with eyes wide open to futures yet written upon the seas of time, and elders whose years were inscribed like ancient maps etched into their skin, each story a testament that change was indeed inevitable, but not without purpose. As Monarch sailed forthward under Reed's steadfast commander hand, as sure on her rudder's helm as the North Star upon nighttime's geese-feathered figurehead, perched atop its wooden mast like a guardian angel, bore silent witness to their purpose. It was more than just an emblem of Monarch. It embodied aspirations that Reed hoped would ripple out into the world as they unfurled sails towards horizons brimming with promise and change, her beacon for a new age where reconciliation might find its port. The winds, capricious yet kindred spirits to their journey's core, offered upward draft after soothing gust that lifted the ship's sails like wings of hope against azure skies, as if in defiance of history itself, a rebuke for all unjust wars and division. Reed felt it then, a kinship with these airborne currents. They were but extensions of his own heartbeat, urging him toward visions wherein once hostile lands might bloom anew from the wreckage wrought by human hands, alone a future sprouting flowers rather than scars. Inside Monarch's wooden belly resided a microcosm of society. Each sailor, with background as diverse as their destinies, were intertwined for this odyssey that promised much more than mere survival, but sowed seeds in foreign soil which had known only war and discord. Reed's voice rose above the creak of wood and groaning timbers, telling tales not just to entertain his crew on their voyage across oceans that mirrored human history's own tumultuous waves, but also imparting lessons learned in unity, or captain whose heart lay with peacemaking as much for those who had sailed before him and the generations yet to traverse seas. The horizon, once a distant line, now seemed within grasp. It promised not only geographical discovery, but an inner voyage towards understanding that transcended mere maps and charts, or Cole Reed was prepared to answer with every sun-drenched mile they sailed under Monarch's steady keel. The ship's bell chimed, marking the hour as daylight claimed dominion over night. It served not just a practical purpose, but reminded all of passage through time, a resonant echo that reverberated within their souls and promised an odyssey towards healing humanity's wounds. As Monarch continued its voyage, the crew would encounter myriad people who had been left by wars to bear silent testimony beneath histories written in blood rather than ink villages, where children played amidst ruins and elders with stories etched into lines of worry upon their brows. Reed hoped his journey might sow seeds for a future where such tragedies were but distant echoes, memories to be honored not just through commemoration, but also transformation, or world renewing itself beyond the ravages that had once been endured in silence and sorrow. The captain's log bore testament to each day as Monarch's canvas of waves lapped gently against its hull with each passing hour. Chapter 8 began not just as a continuation, but also an introspection into Reed's journey and purpose aboard this majestic vessel. The mellow sunlight danced across the deck, where once stood only shadows from history's scars. Now it kissed every sailor with its warmth, whispering of potential renewal in each heartbeat that filled their sails towards new horizons. Reed found solace during these quiet moments when he would sit on the old quarterdeck and look out to where sea met sky or blurred line between worlds, as if nature itself was holding its breath, listening for stories untold yet deeply felt in every grain of sand that slipped through his fingers. He had come here seeking answers, but found questions just beyond reach, ones he knew would require more than the simple passage beneath stars and sun alike to answer full of the needed voices from those very seas they sailed upon now, for Reed yearned not only to sail geographically across waters, but through generations of human experience. One evening, when twilight's embrace was nearly complete, before nightfall took full hold and blanket-like shadows embraced the crew, in a comforting stillness, Monarch anchored near an uncharted island in emerald gem nestled within azure waves that beckoned with promises of tales, long shrouded by time's heavy curtain. The decision to dock had been made not only out of necessity, but felt as if the ship itself whispered through creaks and groans, urging explorers forward into its secret embrace beneath a sky smeared in hues that spoke more poetry than any language could muster, alone a palette forged by gods or perhaps simply painted with nature's own hand. Within the island's heart lay remnants of lives once lived, each echoing Reed's silent quest through this journey toward understanding and peace-building that had brought him to these waters in search not just of new lands, but also old pains etched into humanity itself for mistake of suffering made visible across a landscape scarred by the unending march of history. It was here, amongst ruins where children played, their laughter cutting through silence like sunlight-piercing clouds to reach beneath them. It was within these smiles that Reed found glimmers reflecting back at him or mirror into what might yet be possible when hearts were set free from war's relentless chains. As the days unraveled in Monarch's log, so too did narratives of strife and survival intertwine like roots beneath a forest floor. Stories where each person Reed met bore marks upon their visage that spoke louder than any sword-scathed history textbook ever could. Elders whose eyes had seen more days under foreign suns recounting tales not just of hardship but also resilient self-lives, stubborn insistence on persisting even when the world around seems intent to smother it into obscurity. Their words were a testament that Reed sought, an echo from times both halcyon and darkened by loss. In villages draped with garlands of wildflowers, growing between cracked walls, where once stood homes no only whispers remained as dust settled on tales, untold amidst the remnants left behind like relics that time forgot to claim back into its depths. Here Reed listened intently, absorbing histories woven not through ink but interlaced with sorrow and a relentless hope for peace. And as Monarch charted course once more across the open sea under moonlit guidance their celestial compass to guide them forth towards horizon zeros that whispered of futures less marred by memory's painful shadows, it was here Reed made a silent vow with each sunrise and every nightfall. He would carry forward the seeds sown upon these soils, planting not only flowers, but also understanding in hearts yet untouched by his tale of reconciliation. The journey continued as Monarch's crew melded into an extended family beyond their own, a tapestry woven through shared experiences and the gentle breaking down of barriers built upon fear's foundation. It was a communion born not just from necessity, but compassion that Reed had begun to see within himself, each wave crested with potential for healing as much in themselves as across seas they were yet to explore a fair mission transcending mere navigation of waters and charting unmapped territories upon Earth's vast canvas. It was as Dorn's golden fingers crept over the horizon, Reed felt a familiar warmth settle within him, a sense of purpose renewed with each new day since Monarch had set sail once more under moonlight's guidance. The air was filled with the scent of salt and hope as he joined his fellow crew members on deck for their morning ritual. It seemed like an eternal moment where time held its breath, waiting to unfold stories yet told through actions rather than words. Reed had taken a liking to Marisol's son, Lucre, sprightly lad with eyes that mirrored the endless sea and spirit, as free-flowing as their voyage itself. Despite never having met before this journey at Monarch's helm, Reed sensed an unspoken bond between them through a shared understanding of loss. Marisol had been his mother's sister. He felt her absence keenly during the times they spent together on deck and in conversation by candlelight. One evening, as stars blanketed the sky above Monac, Reed confessed to Luker about this silent kinship that connected him beyond blood or story of loss shared between kindred spirits who found solace not only in each other's company but also within their tales and dreams for a better world. It was an unguarded moment when the sea whispered its secrets, allowing Reed to impart his vision wherein Monarch's journey served as more than just navigation. It became healing and odyssey across not only waterborne miles, but also through humanity's fragmented heart. The crew had found unity in their collective resilience and compassion for one another, which Reed now saw reflected back at him from Luker's bright eyes full of untold stories that the sea carried on its waves. As Monarch charted course beneath a canopy of stars every nightfall, it was not only toward new lands, but also towards building bridges between divided souls, with each passing day upon her Decker Celeste zero strahl compass guiding them to horizons where differences were set aside for the common good. As if responding to Reed's silent invitation, Luker began sharing tales of his village back home during their evening discussions, stories that painted a picture of life untouched by strife and marred history, a stark contrast against Monarch's journey, which had been paved with both the harshness of reality and Reed's relentless hope for reconciliation. These narratives, interwoven into their shared fabric at nighttime gatherings under a canopy stitched from sails and tales alike, served as threads that united them in empathy or tapestry growing with each story told around the flickering light of an oil lamp amidst endless waves. One day during their passage through calm waters near Marisol's homeland now shimmered on his horizon like a mirage, Reed proposed that Monarch's journey should halt there for a while or time to sow seeds he had gathered from the rich soil of histories and experiences shared aboard. He spoke passionately about how Marisol's village was not just an endpoint, but also where their voyage might find its truest meaning, in nurturing bonds between people who, like Reed's heart aches for his mother, yearned to understand the tapestry of lives that had been frayed by past conflicts. The crew agreed without hesitation, Monarch's sails slowing as if taking a deep breath before diving into uncharted depths, their hearts beating with anticipation and trepidations about lands still bearing scars from yesteryears. Battles, yet holding the promise of healing. It was here that Reed envisioned creating an environment where tales could blossom like flowers across a once barren field. His dream entwined around Marisol's village as if it were destiny calling forth its blooms from beneath soil long forgotten by sunlight, but not hope. Upon arrival, the villagers greeted them with cautious smiles and curious eyes. Our community, where whispers of change rustled like leaves in anticipation for Reed's narrative to unfold amongst their own lives entangled within histories they shared, a connection yet never fully understood. It was during these first days that Marisol's son, Luker, offered him tales not just about his village, but also the stories of other children who bore similar scars Reed had come to recognize as markers for peace-seeking hearts amidst histories rife with pain and division. Reed set forth as Reed meandered through Marisol's village on his first day of exploration and connection with her community. He found himself drawn to an ancient oak, at its heart a silent sentinel that had witnessed countless seasons come and go without ever revealing the secrets it harbored within. Underneath its sprawling branches lay a patchwork quilt woven from memories of generations past, threads of joy, sorrow, celebration, and loss all intermingled, as if to suggest that history was not just something one studied but experienced through touching earth where their ancestors had once walked freely. Reed spent hours listening under the oak tree's protective embracer circle formed by Reed, Marisol, her son Luker, and several other villagers whose lives were as intricately linked to this place as roots are to soil. They spoke of a time when their village was divided not just along political lines, but also within the hearts that once beat in unison, where families had been torn apart by strife only for them all to come together now with hope and renewal at heart, seeking solace on common ground. As twilight descended upon Marisol's village one crisp evening, after a day rich with shared stories and laughter that mingled like the scents of their communal meals, Reed proposed they spend another night together as friends instead of merely guests, a small act, but meaningful for healing. The villagers embraced this gesture wholeheartedly. It was an offering back to them from someone who had come seeking understanding and a connection that transcended mere visitation. In their tent, which Reed improvised, with the help of Marisol's son Looker using blankets as canvases for depicting local folklore through vibrant colors borrowed from nature itself, flowers representing peace blooming upon a once warring field, and birds singing melodies that weaved together voices into harmonious choruses. Reed's narrative flowed like the river they all loved, stories told as if it were water caressing their thoughts away with gentle currents of hope. For reckoned zero-entrationer tale not just about Marisol and her village, but one that echoed across lands ravaged by conflicts past. During these evenings spent under the blanket tent, Reed learned to speak in rhythms familiar yet distinctly his own. He found solace with each note of music played on an old violin Luger offered him on whose strings resonated within chambers not just of wood, but also those formed by hearts yearning for unity. As the nights passed, Reed and Marisol's friendship deepened beyond what they had anticipated. It became a tapestry woven with shared dreams that embraced both their individual pasts as well as collective histories, or blending of tales, where children spoke in earnest about playing games once thought lost to them, reviving ancient rituals into playful acts amongst the sands and stones. The village's youth found a mentor in Reed, who brought with him not just an outsider's perspective, but also one that honored their indomitable spirits, or testament of resilience, threading through each shared story told around campfires or beneath starlit canopies, where firelight danced upon faces etched by life's trials yet glowing with the potential for mending. Amidst this communion, a celebration was planned at her festival of stories and songs that would honor Marisol's village history while weaving in threads from Reed's own experiences as an immigrant seeking solace within another community grappling to understand itself post-conflict. It became clear through shared laughter and tears, music interlaced with the hum of bees returning to their hives after a long day's work, it was in this very village that Reed would find his stories, and not just as an observer, but also its author, where he could share tales spun from experiences both alien and familiar. The festivities grew into something more significant than any of them had anticipated, transforming over time to become a beacon for visitors far beyond Marisol's village, or pilgrimage site dedicated not just to the remembrance, but also celebration of lives that were once fractured by conflict. As Reed watched children dance around him as if he was one among them with no sense of foreignness, knowing this could be a turning point in his life's journey where stories become bridges and opportunity for narratives to intertwine and form the sinews that would carry their shared history forward into in Chapter 11 of their tale, we find Reed and Marisol in a quiet corner away from the festivities that had become so much more than just an event. It was now a symbol of peace, unity, and shared narratives between two worlds bound by history. The village square bustled with life as artisans crafted ornate pieces reflective of their vibrant culture as their testament to the fusion of traditions that had come about through understanding and mutual respect fostered over time. Reed felt his heart swell watching children from both communities play together, no longer recognizing where one ended and the other began, as they laughed and played amidst a sea of faces he once would have seen as different, but now understood to be similar in their joys and sorrows. It was this sight that anchored him deeply within Marisol's village, or place not just on maps, but etched into his very soul with hues far richer than the soil from which bloomed flowers of every imaginable color. As he conversed intimately in a mixture of languages and shared stories around an open fire that had been lit by countless fires before him, or conflagration to draw warmth, light, community together through tales, old as time itself, Marisol's daughter approached with her hands full of flowers. She wore them like badges of honor upon the back of a shirt adorned with embroidered patterns passed down from generations past, and present her beautiful amalgamation that spoke to Reed not only about history but also resilience, continuity, survival beyond hardship's shadow. As they conversed beneath starlit skies, where once hostile silhouettes now melted into the night's embrace, Marisol shared with him her family's legacy of storytellers who had bridged communities before their time through words and songs, threading narratives that wove societies together. She spoke fondly about how these stories were not just for entertainment, but a lifeline or means to preserve identity amid change's relentless tide. Reed listened with rapt attention as she described the role storytelling played in her village, and he found himself reflecting on his own experiences back home. The next morning brought a somber tone when they learned of an old man who had once been Marisol's grandfather, a figure that loomed large within family lore as one of the original storytellers responsible for fostering understanding between neighboring communities during times where tensions were high. His passing was felt deeply, and it became clear to Reed how pivotal stories could be in healing wounds inflicted not just by conflict, but also time's eroding touch. In the following days of storytelling marathons that seemed eternal as dusk turned into dawn, they delved deep within themselves and their histories, unearthing tales rich with meaning of love lost to war's cruel hand, bravery in face of insurmountable odds, kindness offered amidst despair. They found solace knowing that through storytelling one could touch the very essence of shared humanity, and Reed felt himself becoming a part of this legacy as he penned his own experiences with immigrant life joys discovered in unfamiliar landscapes alongside trials overcome by Solidar 0123R community bonds. Reed's stories were met with tears, laughter, and nodding heads, the tales of Marisol's grandfather echoing back to him like reflections on a still later connection across time that bridged their experiences beyond mere words into something palpable within hearts beating in unison. The festival had become more than just an event as it continued, growing with each passing day, becoming instead a living history book written by the very hands of its participants and spectators alike, who now shared not only memories, but hopes for tomorrow, or hope that their stories might outlive them all in this village where they found belonging. In time, when nights drew longer, Reed would find himself looking forward to sharing his own story with a newcomer from Marisol's homeland, an act of extending the hand he had learned to offer, a gesture that promised more than just tales, but connections forged in understanding and empathy. As their festival came full circle, it ended not as something complete upon which they could lay down their memories like weary travelers at resting stops along a journey. Rather, with the anticipation of many such gatherings to Khmer pilgrimage site that had transcended its original purpose and become an immortal monument where every story told was another stone laid and found. Chapter 11's gentle murmurs of reminiscence danced within Ree as Marisol watched on, her gaze following his every move, as silent acknowledgment that time might separate their paths physically but never could sever what had blossomed in the heart between them. The festival continued to thrive under the warm embrace of community and shared history. Laughter mingled with melodies as a living tapestry woven through generations unfolded before his eyes, each thread representing an untold story yearning for release into kindred spirits' ears, eagerly awaiting tales spun from lived truths. As the sun dipped lower and shadows grew longer across Marisol's beloved village square, a testament to a day well lived under its golden hues, Reed found his thoughts drifting, lured by an unspoken invitation towards that same place of solace where they had once shared whispered secrets and dreamt together. With the festival in full swing, yet their evening hours still lingering on life's horizon, Reed allowed himself to be guided back into Marisol's world, his heart finding an echo amidst her grandfather's stories that seemed almost sentient with every recollection of his youthful days and folklore passed down through the lineage. Marisol appeared beside him as if drawn by a magnetism born from their shared histories. Each step Reed took towards connection, guided not just by physical inclination, but also an unearthly pull he could scarcely explain in words alone. It was as though his presence had become part of the very village's legacy, or testament to love that transcended time and space. As they stood there, hand resting upon arm, or perhaps brushing against shoulder with just enough touch hinted at a closeness yet unexplored, he realized this moment bore its own significance within their tale. It was more than mere coincidence when she reached out her palm to mirror his gesture, a silent overture of companionship and understanding. The festival's energy ebbed as nightfall approached, with a quiet promise that the moonlit sky would soon watch them, an audience unseen but deeply felt through shared glances charged with meaningfulness. Their story was no longer confined to spoken words alone, it had become something tangible within each other's grasp. As they found themselves under twinkling stars and gentle breezes carrying whispers of past festivals into the future, Reed spoke softly, his voice a soothing balm, as he began recounting tales from Marisol's homeland, not just stories, but threads sewing through time to weave their narrative anew, with each tale that passed between them like sacred fireflies flickering in the darker aspects of life. Reed wove into his words echoes of shared experiences and reflections upon Marisol's grandfather, a man who had lived through times both joyous and sorrowful within these very walls. The tales were not just for her ears alone, but a bridge connecting past to present. He spoke with reverence, every word imbued with the depth of their connection, that blossomed into full bloom as Marisol listened, her heart resonating in harmony with his own and recognizing within herself an ember-sparking recognition. The festival's closing festivities drew nearer. However, Reed knew this was no time for goodbyes, but rather the commencement of another chapter wherein they would find each other amidst new faces, yet remain steadfast upon familiar ground, a reunion under shared skies and within souls entwined. As he reached her hand to trace its outline against his own, she felt a comforting warmth, as if their touch was not just meeting flesh but communion of spirits. It embodied the assurance that stories told were more than mere narrative as they became vessels for experiences and lessons learned in times both grim and grand. In this moment atop Marisol's cherished festival grounds, Reed understood they had become part of a continuum stretching beyond their livid zero ease into the village's heartbeat. It was where stories could live on to touch those yet unborn, or legacy not just in memories, but within every smile exchanged and hand held beneath the canopy of stars above. As Marisol's eyes glistened with reflections akin to constellations, Reed felt an assurance that he was no longer alone amidst this tapestry woven through time, their lover testament not just between two souls, but among all who had ever danced in the moonlight of festivals past and those yet to come. Without in Chapter 13 of our tale, beneath a sky that shimmered with history's touch and whispers of love long enduring, Reed found himself enveloped in silence, so profound it seemed to reverberate within his very core, a quietude not unlike the one he felt when first they met. He watched as Marisol moved through her tasks at their shared haven, a place where every nook and cranny resonated with laughter, music, and heartbeats that matched those of generations before them. She hummed an ancient melody passed down from elders whose stories wove the village into one grand narrative to which Reed felt he belonged as much as any native child or revered sage who had danced upon these grounds in times forgotten and yet ever present within their collective memory. Marisol paused, her gaze resting for a heartbeat on his face before lifting it from the ground to meet hers, was souls reflecting each other's warmth light. Twin sunrises painting hues of hope into dust-tinted skies above them. It was in this moment that Reed sensed an awakening, a stirring within him, as if her eyes were not just windows to the soul, but mirrors revealing his essence laid bare in unspoken understanding between two kindred spirits who had traversed life's trials and emerged with their bond only strengthened by each challenge faced. The festival was drawing its curtain close, nightfall embracing them as tenderly as a mother cradling her child through dreamless slumber. The day's revelries now echoes in soft whispers of laughter carried on gentle breezes that meandered among rows and circles of sleepy faces. Reed reached into his pocket, fingers finding comfort not only in the fabric, but also within its fold small bundle Marisol had given him days before as a token to remember her by. It was now time for them both to part ways with fond farewells that were anything but finalities, because their journey together would continue beyond this gathering of hearts and spirits. As they stood, Reed felt the presence beside him not just in Marisol's arms, but within his every pore, a sensation as familiar and reassuring as home itself. It was then that he realized with a start how much their love had become interwoven into this festival's very soul. Each shared glance, smile, and touch imbued the air around them with an unspoken promise of return when seasons changed or destinies diverged, a testament to enduring connections as timelessly eternal as stars in constellations. Marisol looked into Reed's eyes and saw his quiet reflection staring back, a mirror that held both their past sorrows and joys intertwined with the hope of all future tales yet untold. She knew then her heart had found its place among these cherished festivities, her home where each beat was in harmony with others who danced under moonlit skies. Reed took a deep breath, feeling his lungs fill not just with air but the essence of their shared journey through life's intricate dance. It seemed as if every exhalation carried away remnants of fear and uncertainty, while inhaling was an affirmation to cherish what they had within each other and perhaps beyond. As he extended his hand toward her, Marisol accepted the gesture with a grace that bespoke their years together, yet hinted at countless more spun from threads invisible like flight through prisms. It mattered not whether others would join in this dance of two or if they were to be apart for stretches unimaginable. What truly pulsated within these veins was the knowledge that love, much like history itself, stories etched into cobblestones and carried on winds through meadows where children played hide and seek with shadows of yore, was infinite in its capacity to endure beyond measure. They stood as pillars amidst a sea of faces that shifted like sands under moonlight's whims, each person contributing their own verse to the epic poem they were all part of. Reed knew now this was not an ending, but rather the common cementer promise whispered in every shared glance and touch between them. As Marisol drew her hand back, with a melancholy smile that touched his lips tenderly, he realized their love did more than just exist within these moments. It lived through memories planted like seeds which would grow into tales of joy sown by future generations to come. They were the guardians and keepers of legacies, yet in chapter 14 of our tale began to unfold a memory so vivid and heartwarming that even as Reed closed his eyes, he could still feel Marisol's touch against his cheek, a sensation like no other had ever touched him before in the many seasons they were together. It was during one such evening, when autumn leaves danced to the ground beneath their boots while auburn sunsets gave way to indigo night skies, that Reed realized love's essence could be likened to an ancient river flowing through time, unending and eternal, ever-changing, yet steadfastly present. It was on this particular eve, when the village had gathered for its annual harvest festival. Their laughter carried over fields, mingling with music that seemed as old as the hills themselves. Reed stood atop a wooden stool beside Marisol, her delicate porcelain figurine perched in her hand like an amulet of protection and love. They watched children chasing fireflies under the emerald canopy, their giggles weaving through reeds, while parents shared stories that bridged generations with every word spoken aloud to eager ears below. Marisol's gaze fixed upon a young couple seated on a worn bench near an old oak tree where they often played during the festival of yesteryears, their hands entwined as tightly and tenderly as roots beneath earth's surface are silent pledge to each other. Reed saw his own reflection in those innocent eyes. He understood then that love was not a finite ember, but an ever-kindling flame within the soul's hearth, capable of withstanding stormy weathers and drought alike. As night unfurled its blanket across their village skyline adorned in stars, like silver threads embroidered into velvet darkness, Reed felt Marisol's presence beside him, her constant companion on this journey through life's seasons. He knew that her warmth was a beacon of hope amidst the ever-shifting dance between shadow and light upon their faces as they aged together like ancient monuments to time itself. The couple, who had once been but children themselves under an equally watchful moon, centuries added their ancestors, whispered through generations in tales, spun by a bard with his lyre resting against the crook of his arm, had always stood as pillars within their community's heart. Marisol and Reed, now standing side by side once more under this very same moonlight that had witnessed countless beginnings and endings since time immemorial, knew love was an eternal cycle, much like the celestial bodies above them, in constant motion, yet always returning to its starting point. Reed took Marisol's hand in his own as they made their way back into her family home, where candles flickered and cast a golden glow on portraits of ancestors past, each visage eternally smiling at the joys that had been celebrated within these walls. The scent of roasted pumpkin filled the air, a homage to autumn's embrace in which they both found comfort, as if wrapping themselves in a familiar quilt knitted by their forebears with threads dyed from nature's own garden. In Marisol, Reed recognized not just his beloved, but also echoes of the past that resonated through her laughter and whisperings, a symphony composed across lifetimes where each note was a memory shared or cherished between them alone. Their love had always been an unspoken language understood only by two. As they sat together, enveloped in silence, so profound it felt, like the hush of snowflakes upon winter's first breath, their eyes locked and hearts beating, as one rhythm synced with timeless echoes that reverberated through their very bones. Reed knew this was not an ending, but a promise renewing itself within them. Love, much like history which they had danced to from the dawn of time until now, does more than exist in moments. It is etched into our being and passed down as legacies that outlive fleshly vessels themselves, just as Marisol's legacy would one day become a part of him. Their fingers brushed lightly over each other's skin like the first touches of spring upon wind-torn earth, awakening dormant seeds buried too long beneath frost. Reed felt hope blossom within his chest as Marisol's eyes twinkled with unshed tears for a love that had weathered more storms than the tallest reed, and Marisol sat in their favorite garden bench under a sky painted with hues of twilight, they let themselves be carried away by memories that danced like autumn leaves caught in an unforgiving wind, each one unique yet part of the same whirlwind. The air seemed to hum softly around them, as if it held secrets from ages past within its cool embrace. Reed reached out, his fingers tracing delicate patterns on Marisol's cheek where her laughter had once melted into sunshine that now only flickered in the shadows of leaves rustling above their heads. Their symphony grew silent as they contemplated a future unwritten but palpably there, woven intricately within each other's souls. It was then Reed understood. Love could not be tethered to mere moments, or the physical form of its bearers, because it lived in perpetuity. It would survive them both as an enduring testament embedded deep within their very essence, much like Marisol's own history. It had been passed down from generation to generation before they found each other, and promised itself again with Reed's heartbeat synchronizing once more in her embrace. It was a legacy of connection so profound that it transcended Liffit 0ns themselves, echoing through the ages, as if love were both their ancestors' whisperings and heirloom seeds sown into fertile ground. The garden around them seemed to cradle this understanding in its vines, her guardian of time that had witnessed countless human stories unfold within its embrace, yet none quite like Reed's, intertwined with Marisol's. And as they sat together, enveloped by the muted colors and tranquil silence typical for a setting sun-kissed day, their hands clasping one another tighter than any before, despite knowing that distance would pull them apart come morning, Reed felt an embrace of his own heart's core. A warmth spread through him, as if the garden itself had unfurled its petals to welcome this renewal of their silent vows or promise, not spoken, but deeply understood, and reverently kept within every shared breath and sigh between them since that fateful encounter beneath a sky ablaze with aurora, where destiny first danced upon his tongue. Reed's fingers found Marisol's once more as they traced the outline of her face, her features etched into him over countless sunsets and starlit nights. He could almost hear their whispers carried by wind through ancient trees, echoing stories long lost but never forgotten in this sacred space. The garden, with all its silent witnesses rooted firmly beside them for epochs uncountable, served as a timeless altar where the heart of history beat just beneath her palm and his ear. They were both custodians of an inheritance too precious to be squandered on mere words. Their journey together had been one that traversed through seasons, each leaving its mark upon their souls like tender scars, a testament not only to the love shared, but also a pilgrimage across time where they become walking museums of affection and understanding forged in mutual vulnerability. Reed closed his eyes briefly, as if he could see her visage etched into him, every wrinkle telling tales that whispered with Marisol's timbre duet, some softly to the rhythm of their unspoken devotion. It was a melody composed in moments, suspended beyond time's reach. As they sat there together under history's watchful eye, Reed felt an ancestral pull towards Marisol that seemed as natural and essential as breath, a connection woven into the very threads of their being that had always pulsed beneath surfaces seen only by those who dared to look beyond. Love for them was not a stranger, but rather kindred spirits bound in serendipitous fate. It flowed through rivers carved with memories and over mountains weathering storms, yet ever persistent her force, as immutable as the constellations that had guided sailors of old to lands anew. Reed knew Marisol's legacy would one day be his own to cherish beyond this earthly garden. Her essence promised itself within him in ways words could never capture, becoming a silent yet sonorous echo through the chambers of future generations, her love so timeless it defied definition. As they sat together that evening under starlight and shared history's gaze as constant companions on their journey forward, Reed felt an assurance in his heart, marred in chapter 16 of our tale, under moonlight's tender glow and starlit canvases stretched wide across night's expanse. Reed found himself wrapped in a comforting embrace with Marisol. Their shared history now felt as much a part of him as his own heartbeat. Each note she played on her violin seemed to resonate not only through the air but within their souls together. It was music that could weave time and make moments relive themselves in vivid hues, even when night's shroud began its slow descent upon their world. They had discovered an abandoned cottage nestled amongst ancient oaks, where history lay thick as thorny brambles, her place untouched by the relentless march of time except for these two kindred spirits who found solace within its walls, a refuge from reality's inexorable rush. The air inside carried whispers of stories, long told and still resonating through generations. Every artifact seemed imbued with echoes that only they could hear, their shared love becoming the thread binding them to times past as much as present. Reed's fingers traced outlines in dust on old piano keys, revealing fingerprint patterns from decades ago, when a young couple had also sought refuge here before him and Marisol. Their presence seemed no more than shadows dancing playfully across the wall-slippers of lives lived fully beneath these same rafters that now cradled his dreaming heart. Marisol's delicate touch upon strings told tales without words as she played a melancholy tune reminiscent of her grandmother's lullabies, and Reed felt the warmth of history embrace him like an old friend returning home after years apart, her connection, unspoken yet understood between them. He knew that each note carried with it whispers from ancestors whose love for music had been passed down through time to her, a legacy now flowing in his veins as he felt the beat of Marisol's own heart synchronizing within him, making their presence here feel less like an accidental meeting and more ordained. Their fingers entwined on piano keys or violin strings became conduits for love's timeless song or symphony that transcended spoken language as they surrendered themselves to the moment without needing words, when gazes met across candlelit tables where memories were savored like sweetmeats. As dawn approached, painting rosy fingers over night's retreat, and casting a gentle light upon ancient stones outside their cottage doorway which had stood witness for centuries of lives lived in passing, Reed knew that love was not merely an emotion between two souls, but rather the essence they shared with all who came before them, knitting together threads unseen across lifetimes. The world began to stir outside as Reed and Marisol whispered promises into waking mornings, ere a pact that was not merely a promise of future togetherness but an affirmation rooted in the past's embrace, where love for them had always been present. They knew this place held magic. It cradled their spirits together as they looked forward to discovering what new tales would find expression through music and laughter, a shared journey that danced hand in hand with history's unwavering gaze. As the sun climbed higher, casting a brighter light upon them in its path of ascension, while shadows retreated back to their corners of darkness where they once played as children under watchful stars and whispered secrets within foliage that had cradled generations, Reed felt an assurance settle firmly into his heart. The legacy he would one day carry forward from this sacred place, intertwined with Marisol's own spirit, was indelible. It promised itself to him in the silent language of their souls, connecting through shared melodies that sang beyond time's reach and echoed within eternity, or love not confined by definition, but expanding like galaxies into realms yet uncharted. And as they arose from beneath dream's veil, hand in hand to greet the day anew with a promise of tomorrow already sown between their lips in tender vows whispered back against history's ear, Reed and Marisol knew that within them burned love for each other so pure it transcended mere earthly existence. They were kindred spirits, bound by destiny's intricate web. The cottage stood silent as the world awoke around its timeless foundation, where Reed's heart had found refuge, and Marisol's, as they walked side by side through the dew-kissed meadow just beyond their home. Reed reached out his hand and found Marisol's palm, cool against his own warmth. It was as though he could touch time itself, felt only in this sacred place where each step forward had been taken. The air carried with it the fragrant scent of blooming jasmine, a perfume that seemed to wrap around their beings like a comforting shawl from days long past when they were children, an era encapsulated by innocence and wonder amidst this very soil where now Reed's feet found solace. Reed glanced at Marisol with eyes brimming yet sparkling, his heart swelling within him as he looked upon the woman who had shaped such memories into a future testament to their shared journey through life's unpredictable symphony, where music and laughter played hand in hand. The world around them was alive with its own rhythms. Bird song wove between leaves, insects hummed in the grass, all composing an intricate counterpoint that only deepened Reed's sense of belonging to this moment or timeless juncture where past and present danced upon a shared path. They found themselves at their favorite spot by a babbling brook whose waters had witnessed countless stories before cradling them now, its surface reflecting the sky above like an azure canvas painted with light that seemed to hold Reed's reflection as much for himself to gaze upon his own eyes and see Marisol's in their depth. The water whispered secrets of ages past. He could almost hear echoes of laughter, music carried on its waves down through the annals of time into this very stream, where Reed's fingers traced her cheek a touch that spoke volumes more than words ever might within these hallowed grounds. As they sat upon a fallen log and watched as children played in fields further along with their innocent joy, it became clear to them how intertwined were the threads of all life present here. Reed felt his spirit melding once again into Marisol's fusion that transcended individual existence. Their hands still clasped together, she squeezed his tenderly as if in prayer, her touch sending ripples across a pond he knew so well yet never truly saw the depth of until now. Their love had become part and parcel of this landscape where history's heartbeats resonated with every drum within them. Within Reed's chest was an assurance, firm as stone but warmer than any gemstone could mimic. Marisol knew it to her sense that their love had become a part of something larger and eternal beyond the reaches of time's fickle gaze to which they were no strangers. The cottage stood silent behind them, its timbers holding stories within each grain as if eagerly waiting for tales yet untold. It seemed almost like an altar, where their union had been consecrated with every hopeful glance and tender caress exchanged here amidst whispering shadows of twilight. As Marisol's hand slipped into Reed's, he felt as if they were touching the very fabric upon which fate itself was embroidered, a connection so profound that their spirits seemed to converse through shared dreamscapes, where reality and reverie blurred seamlessly. The laughter of children playing in nearby fields crescendoed into a symphony. It carried with them promises, the same ones Reed had pledged upon his lips just as they embarked on this renewal at daybreak, or love that defied constraints and flourished within every pulse shared here between two souls. Their gazes met often over time's course. In them was a reflection not only of the self, but an echo chamber for the music, laughter, stories whispered amongst trees by those who had come before, a chorus that lifted their spirits as they journeyed, as dawn's first light painted a delicate glow across their faces and over Marisol's shoulder where Reed sat. They both knew this was not just another day. It felt like an epochal moment when two hearts beat in unison under the expansive sky. The warmth of sunlight seeped into every corner of the cottage, as though nature itself were blessing their union, with a gentle touch that whispered promises to those who would listen closely enough. Reed rose from his seat, feeling an exquisite weight lifting off him. It was time for them both to venture out and breathe in life beyond these walls where they had shared so many quiet mornings over cups of steaming tea accompanied by the rustle of leaves against their window. They began with a walk through fields that rolled like green waves, touching dandelions whose wispy seeds danced on breezes as if celebrating this very moment, or celebration both Reed and Marisol were partaking in silently but profoundly nonetheless. The meadows bore witness to the passage of time through a mosaic of wildflowers that colored their path, each petal contributing its own story like footnotes on parchment pages written by nature itself. The sun traveled higher as they strolled along winding paths, and Reed felt his heart swell with gratitude for this serendipitous meeting. His life had led him to Marisol, who now stood before him not merely as a partner, but the very grounding of everything real he knew. They paused at ancient oaks that seemed stoic sentinels, overseeing their love's journey. Here Reed reached out for her hand, and they traced patterns in bark with fingers interlocked like vines weaving through one another, creating a living tapestry where each groove spoke of shared smiles and silent understandings. As children played nearby, a symphony composed by their youthful exuberance that echoed the innocence Marisol had once harbored within her own heart before he entered into hers. Reed realized how this love, like the laughter around them, was a melody beyond measure. It defied constraints and transcended mere human experience. It flowed through their veins as surely as blood courses onward in life's grand design. They arrived at an old stone bridge that meandered over a babbling brook, where Reed knelt down, dipping his hands into the cool water to offer Marisol one more symbol of this union, or gesture not unlike their own marriage, but infinitely richer in meaning, because it was done with eyes closed and hearts unguardedly open. Her laughter then mingled seamlessly with that of children playing on fields beyond, as if her joy itself could carry forward into the future like ripples across this water's surface, or promise made tangible through shared experiences rooted in genuine affection. They continued their walk to a hilltop where twilight approached and painted skies with hues of amber and lavender, casting everything below them in an ethereal glow that felt like the world itself had paused just for this moment between sunset's farewell kisses upon earth's cheek. They found themselves sitting side by side on mossy rocks overlooking a valley where stars began to emerge as if timid children peering out from behind curtained night skies, and Reed felt the cool touch of evening air wrap around them like an embrace, a reminder that their love too was part of something larger beyond just this present reality. As darkness enveloped days end with a velvet cloak only to reveal it again in morning's tender light, Reed and Marisol knew the chapters they were writing together would outlast them both, a legacy etched into every laughter shared under sunshine or moonlight alike. Their intertwined fingers now lay gently upon each other's back as night creatures emerged to sing their nocturnal anthem, a chorus that spoke of renewal and the beauty found in life's unfold mysteries. They listened with hearts full, finding comfort in knowing this love was not just for them, it belonged to eternity itself. And as Reed looked at Marisol's peaceful face illuminated by fireflies that had come forth like living constellations around their solitary spot on the hilltop, he knew it wasn't merely her eyes reflecting his own. They were reflections of shared dreams and desires, or mirror to a soul entangled with another. This love was not just about them, but also those who had come before Reed and Marisol found themselves on that hilltop once again as dawn stretched its first golden fingers across their shared haven, a place where time seemed to stand still under the watchful eyes of ancient oaks whose roots had witnessed countless seasons pass by like fleeting shadows. This morning held something special, or promise wrapped in dew-laden grass and whispers carried on gentle breezes that spoke secrets only true lovers dare listen, where every rustle was a stanza, each chirp an echo of their joined heartbeats against the quiet backdrop of nature's awakening symphony. Today marked another year since Reed had first seen Marisol under that same star-pricked sky or night, when destiny seemed to weave its threads with deliberate care, as if it understood they were fated for one another beyond the mere coincidence of crossing paths on a serendipitous evening. Now their hands no longer merely met, but held each other through seasons that painted and repainted them in every imaginable hue, from fiery reds to soft pastels, from lively greens alluring with spring's promise to the somber grays of autumn's introspective embrace. As they sat side by side on their beloved hilltop retreat this morning, Marisol traced her fingers along Reed's cheek while he watched as sunlight played peekaboo through leaves above the mad living prism, dancing with colors before settling down to kiss the ground. They had learned from each other's embrace that love was not just a feeling but an art form, one they painted together across canvases of shared experiences and deep emotional brushstrokes. It required patience as much as passion when blending shades into seamless harmony or correcting missteps with gentle touches. Reed's mind often wandered back to the first winter night they had spent together, wrapped in a blanket so thick and warm that even if the world beyond their circle of comfort grew colder around them, all was safe within its folds, or time when laughter echoed through snow-laden branches as though every giggle were crystal chimes celebrating new-found connection. They had built fortresses from fallen logs to hide inside during rainstorms that pattered like a lullaby against the window pane, and there those moments became their secret verses of love whispered only between them, each drop an assurance of enduring presence in one another's lives through every season's song. Marisol would speak softly now about dreams they had once shared beneath a moonlit sky so full it seemed to beckon with open arms, where their eyes locked over the horizon and time stood still for an eternity of silent promises, or timeless dance between souls that knew no bounds except those set by hearts daring enough to reach beyond. Reed's memories, too, were rich tapestries woven from threads both tender and bold. He remembered their first kiss under the summer sun, where he played maestro, leading a crescendo of joyous sounds until night's curtain fell upon them like an afterglow that lingered long into sleep. They found solace in these shared reminiscences as each recalled how they had learned to grow toward them, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually too. For love is not a solitary journey across the winding roads of life alone, but rather one that can be traveled side by side with eyes turned upward toward tomorrows yet unseen. Together against all odds they had defied fear's whispering spectre, stepping into each other's embrace as if to declare forever unto the wind, a declaration carved not just in words but engraved upon their very essence by shared trials and triumphs that danced through every day lived together. The world around them was a constant hum of existence beyond themselves, yet within this small circle on Earth's grand stage where they had found each other a place, suspended between the past's embrace and future aspirations unfurling like leaves reaching toward life-giving light, they were both home and refuge. They knew that love was not just for them, it belonged to eternity itself, as if their bond resonated with all those who had ever loved deeply enough to risk vulnerability on the altar of connection in hopes of finding a mirror soul within another's gaze. With each glance exchanged over shared treasures found and wonders beheld, whether it be an ancient tree that bore history-woven bark, or fireflies lighting up night SK in Chapter 20 of our tale, we settle into a cozy evening as dusk paints its purples and blues across an autumn sky, while their hands find each other under soft blankets on a shared bed that feels like home to both hearts. The fireplace crackles gently in the background, providing warmth against the chill of nights spent pondering dreams beneath star-speckled skies, and beside one another's side a constant reminder of their journey through seasons past. Their day began with a stroll down cobbled lanes lined with ancient oaks, each leaf like amber jewels spilled upon the path as they traced steps back to where time seemed young and love had just begun its first tender bloom amidst whispering pines that stood witness to their blossoming affection. They spoke of tomorrows yet, unseen not with trepidation but in shared breaths filled with hope, each word a thread weaving the fabric of futures they dared to dream together while wrapped around fingers and hearts alike. As sunlight waned into twilight's embrace, their laughter mingled freely as if there were no echoes but for the mass symphony that played in defiance against silence's grasp. They spoke of grandfathers who once danced under moonlit skies just like this one, tales spun from the yarn of ancestors whose steps had trodden these very streets long before their time, and whispers they carried onward to future generations as an echo of love's eternal pledge. The couple often paused beside a brook where water danced over stones smoothed by countless years. It murmured secrets about the persistence of life even when moments seemed fleeting or lesson imprinted in their shared journey, from tender first glances to eyes that held depths reflecting histories intertwined. Here, under a sky where stars twinkled like distant lighthouses, guiding ships through night's uncertainties, they pledged an oath not spoken aloud but felt within the very essence of their being, a commitment to endure as seasons changed and years added layers upon precious memories. In quietude that blanketed all worldly noise like a tender quilt on cold nights when fear's spectre whispered, they would find solace in each other's embrace. Their fingers brushed against the texture of shared treasure as her tapestry depicting their love and life together, every thread woven with intentions pure enough to stand as a testament for eternity itself, if walls could speak or time hold its breath at such declarations made not just in words but engraved upon souls. Their shared reflections found solace often within the pages of history, where tales, long told by flickering candlelight, revealed that love was a journey traversed with others before the map half trodden through time's endless march towards destinations unknown yet yearned for in every heartbeat. It is here and now they are among kindred spirits who understood the sacredness of unity as much as their own, whose stories linger like ghosts whispering across generations about love's immeasurable worth, when one dares to leap into another's arms with open eyes toward tomorrows yet unseen. One night they shared a blanket in the park, where children played and laughter rang clearer than any bell, echoes of innocence that seemed as if it could still hold sway over hearts grown older, but never wiser to love's true essence that knowledge found nestled within their union's depth. Amidst this haven for youthful exuberance, where time had not yet aged the cheeks of joy, they felt connected beyond themselves, like two souls entwined in life's grand ballet, with every pirouette and ply choreographed by shared passions, her dance as timeless as love itself. Their bond transcended mere companionship to become a tapestry of intertwining destinies, woven through trials, faced together like warriors on noble quests for the heart's treasure that was always within reach if one dared just look and truly see, a promise penned not in parchments but etched upon their shared spirit by every sunrise they greet with unwavering hope. The world outside continued its relentless hum, a backdrop to the quiet intimacy within four walls adorned with memories, both precious and newer, sanctuary where time could slow to savor each moment as if it were their last shared respite from in Chapter 21 of their shared history, a tale as old and comforting as time itself. Couple found themselves in the embrace of dusk, painting everything they saw with hues of gold and amber, while shadows grew long around them like fingers tracing paths through each other's thoughts. The park became a canvas for remembrance. It was here that their love had first blossomed under the watchful eye of countless stars or night, when fate, in its infinite jest, brought two souls together as if by destiny itself, guided not only to meet, but also to understand one another. As twilight deepened into a velvet blanket overhead, and their breaths formed clouds that danced away from them like spirits fleeing the waking world, they reminisced about how once upon this very spot or time before tomorrows had etched themselves firmly in memory's locket. With each shared smile as old friends passed by unleashed companions, or children chasing after butterflies that fluttered above like dreamlike echoes of simpler times, they felt their love grow deeper and more rooted within them more than just a connection. It was the very essence that defied time's relentless march. Their fingers brushed as if magnetic forces drew together through layers upon layers of skin, each touch an unspoken dialogue between two hearts beating in synchrony amidst life's cacophony, or soundtrack composed by the rustling leaves and distant laughter that served to remind them why they cherished these moments. It was a bond not merely built on shared experiences, but also upon understanding, whispered secrets, hopes entrusted between one another like sacred relics of their journey together through life's trials, or testament woven into the very air around them, as if love itself had spun threads invisible yet palpable within this intimate ballet. They watched a couple with babies in arms, finding solace and kinship in how even new beginnings could be cradled gently by time's hand, a reminder that life continued its cycle outside their haven of four walls, but inside remained an oasis where every echoed chuckle felt like the soft pattering rain on a window pane, inviting them to close their eyes and let themselves float away into dreamscapes painted with love's tender hues. As night began its slow encroachment upon daylight's last stand, they knew that it wasn't just about surviving the passage of time, but rather thriving within each shared second or commitment to treasure every sunset as if painting their own masterpiece with strokes dipped in joy and companionship. And thus together beneath a tapestry woven from countless dusks, they pledged not just for more days ahead, but also celebrated the depth of love that had always been there, as silent anthems sung by two voices melding into one within this serene park, where time's relentless hum faded to a mere whisper. For even as the world spun its tales of strife and sorrow, they found solace in knowing their story was not written on parchment, but penned upon hearts in eternal dance that continued unabated within four walls, adorned with memories both precious and new-found. And amidst this haven, where time could slow to savor each moment as if it were their last shared respite from the world's relentless march, they closed not just eyes, but also hearts upon one another, a promise that even when dawn arrived to break apart dreams spun in moonlight's embrace, love would remain steadfast like a lighthouse guiding ships through night seas. Within this sanctuary of shared history and heartbeats synchronizing with the rhythm of life itself, a place where every sunrise greeted them not just as bodies but souls intertwined in love's eternal ballet, they knew that their journey was less about traversing miles or years, more about savoring each breath taken together. And thus they whispered vows to the night breeze, sweeping through leaves above and echoes of laughter around them like sacred incantations binding two spirits across time's boundless realm, a testament that even when seasons changed within themselves or without, their love would endure as an undying flame flickering against life's encroaching night. And so they lingered beneath the gaze of stars, unnumbered in this chapter, but countless in legends told by generations before the Mac constellation, guiding lost lovers and kindred spirits through nocturnal odyssey in Chapter 22 of their timeless journey. As dawn began to break through the curtains of night and streaks of golden light crept into Emma's room, she found herself cradled in James' arms, their embrace warm with a comfort that transcended mere physicality. It was on such mornings they often rose together. His gentle kiss at her lips, the first touch after sleep, had held them gently through dreamscapes woven from threads of silver moonbeams and emerald dusk. This morning Emma's heart fluttered with a sense of tranquility as she felt James' chest rise and fall in sync with her rhythm, born not only out of shared breath, but also the synchronicity that had evolved between their souls over countless days beneath stolid canopies. Their love was an ancient river, flowing through uncharted territories, yet ever carrying them forward, nurturing life along its banks with whispers of eternal promises and shared vows. Echoes in the hushed reverence for each other's presence had become sacred. As they awoke to this sensation of profound connection that seemed as though it would never fray or fade even when night gave way again, Emma reached out with soft fingers caressing James' cheek beneath his chin and whispered into the cool air of their sanctuary, "Today we continue our journey through time." James' response was a tender hum that resonated within her bones. He understood without words. Their love had no need for declarations, only this unspoken language they shared with each other and all who were blessed to witness their unity throughout the ages. And as he held Emma closer, still before his eyes closed once more in sleep's final surrender, James knew that whatever daybreak brought forth upon them or any nightfall shrouded behind him, they would always find themselves here, together beneath this celestial isle canopy of love and light, their hearts intertwined like the roots of ancient trees. Outside Emma's window, a melody played on as if conjured by unseen hands, to celebrate such mornings, when two kindred spirits found solace in one another, a lullaby that wound through leaves and danced upon petals bathed softly in the embrace of dawn's first light. It was said amongst those who knew their love's legendary depth, this melody had guided lost lovers to each other across seas, where stormy waters sought to separate hearts meant for unity, or siren song that lured them back into one another's arms with the gentle certainty of a homecoming. As Emma and James lay tangled in shared dreams, their spirits danced upon memories like petals caught on currents carried by zephyrs above. Together they had traversed through days when shadows lengthened under brooding skies, or nightfall's cool caress felt bittersweet as it signaled the end of time's fleeting moments. It always, their love emerged like a steadfast flame flickering defiantly against encroaching darkness. Within this ethereal grove, where laughter and whispers mingled with rustling foliage, became an echoed testament to bonds that no mortality could sever, where the heartbeat of one was invariably linked with another's own in a chorus too profound for solitary ears. "We are but travelers on this earthly plane," Emma murmured as she found herself whispering once more into James' ear, "yet our journey is measured not by the miles we tread, nor years that pass beneath life's expansive skeezer path lies in every shared breath and unguarded moment cradled within this sacred dance of existence." James lifted her gently to his chest as they lay nestled, a pair entwined not by fate but through choice, choosing each day together with the same fervor one might choose between paths divergent upon life's labyrinthine journey. And when he kissed Emma's forehead tenderly at their shared repose, it was more than an act of affection, it was a silent vow to honor and cherish every heartbeat that echoed within the chambers of this intimate chamber, for they knew well enough such moments were rare gems unearthed not in abundance but with careful patience. As Dorn's warm fingers began their tender ascent against Emma's cheek, she felt a contentment settled deep into her soul, a serene assurance that though seasons would shift and tides of life ebbed and flowed around them, as Emma's eyelids grew heavy and her breathing slowed into a gentle rhythm matching that of James, she let herself drift within his comforting embrace, her haven, where time seemed to relinquish its grip on mortal coils. Her mind was adrift in thoughts as tranquil as the lullabies sung by ancient cradles under starlit skies, when suddenly a tender memory unfolded, painting their story not just across lifetimes but through generations untold, an echo of love's eternal melody that had resounded since time immemorial. James, too, was swept into the current of recollection as he found himself standing at Emma's bedside, yet against his image a recurring tapestry within his heart, woven with threads of affection and shared silence, for though they were but two souls entwined by choice in this dance called life, their essence was intertwined through invisible filaments that spanned the ages. In days long past her time, when candles flickered softly against stone walls laden with tales of yore, and whispered secrets from hearths once ablaze with communal warmth, lovers had found solace in each other's arms, their pulses echoing to the rhythm set by a world yet untouched by modernity's relentless march. It was within these hallowed spaces where Emma and James felt as though they traversed not just through time but also across realms of emotion, realms that defied measurement, for their love knew no borders or constraints born from the passage of years alone. It transcended mere existence to become a timeless sonnet sung with each shared breath. As Emma's thoughts meandered down memory's stream toward these ancestral echoes, James found himself tracing her mind through fields lush and verdant under sunsets that blazed like molten gold upon the horizon. He too felt transported to a time when their love was but an ember beneath kindling flames of possibility. Together they had ventured into this ancestral reverie, seeking comfort in its familiar warmth as if it were meant for them alone, a sanctuary where no footstep could mar the delicate dance floor upon which their thoughts pirouetted with such grace and ease. Yet there existed a truth within those ancient halls that whispered of endless renewal. They knew love was not just about finding oneself in another, but also discovering anew each day's worth, or journey through seasons both harsh and gentle, where the strength to cherish came from understanding its rarity amidst life's relentless tempests. Their bond had been forged with hands that knew not of silver nor gold. Instead, wrapped in silken threads, spun by fate's unseen tapestry, woven with strands as delicate and resilient as the very essence they shared, a testament to love's ability to endure through trials both temporal and existential. As Emmer's thoughts began their descent into dreamland once more beneath Jane's steadfast gaze, a sea of azure eyes reflecting not just her own, but also an ocean deep with his unspoken promises, she knew that though the sun would eventually rise to claim dominion over night, there was a constancy in him, one as certain and unfaltering as love itself. For Emmer had learned from those who came before them within this sacred dance of existence ere wisdom passed down through whispered lullabies sung by mothers' lips that spoke directly to the heart's ear, telling tales not just of enduring but also beginning anew with every sunrise. In her union with James was found a promise renewed each day, for love had always been about more than shared journeys or solace in one another. It existed as hopefulness woven into the fabric of life, ensuring that even when shadows stretch long and night's curtain falls upon all too soon to return again, in her heart Emmer harbored a quiet trust, for she knew well enough that those seasons would shift like sands beneath tides unseen. A truth as inevitable as the cycle of day succumbing to moon's dominion over night sky. Once more their love story was etched not just upon this earthly plane, but within a celestial manuscript, where each chapter penned with their essence would outlast even time itself. And so, when Emmer's breath became soft whispers of contentment against James' ear, as he whispered the name that had always been her anchor, a reminder not just to him, but also in his own, it wasn't always so tranquil or assured in life for Emmer and James. Once upon a time, not very long ago, when they were younger souls, rushing through seasons of joy and despair, like if he too knew the fears that now seemed distant memories, the trembling trepidation at love's uncertainties, doubts about their future, together echoed like hollow whispers in nightmares. But as with every soul on earth touched by Emmer's warmth and James' enduring strength, they rose from the cinders of such fear to embrace a dawn that promised renewal, or cycle repeating itself within each heartbeat shared between them. The porch was quiet now, not even crickets. Serenade punctuated by laughter or whispered secrets exchanged in tender moments filled the air around them, as it often did when twilight kissed day, farewell, and night began to claim her reign over their world of dreams. The couple sat together with eyes shut, but senses wide awake within a haven that had grown from roots sunk deep into this very earther place they called home, where every stone, each blade of grass held stories only found in the heart's embrace rather than written on parchment or etched upon tablets. Emmer felt her hand fall away as if it were never there at all. She simply closed their eyes and sank deeper into a peaceful oblivion, surrendering to James' soothing touch against hers, unspoken language spoken only in the depth of shared souls, where words failed yet understanding flourished like wildflowers after spring rain. And with every night that passed beneath these very same stars they had once sought refuge from their youthful fears and doubts, Emmer felt less a captive to time's relentless march forward, as she now stood on the threshold of eternity in lover journey not measured in years, but moments lived fully with James beside her. In this sacred place where they found solace together amidst life's ebb and flow, Emmer came upon a realization that transcended even time itself. Love is an immortal being, born of the first sunrises and cradled by countless dusks until it becomes as eternal as stars themselves. It does not belong to any single lifetime, but rather spans across infinite nights, woven into souls like threads in a tapestry that only grows richer with every life shared under its mantle, a testament of the heart's capacity for boundless generosity and endurance against all odds. As dawn approached on what would be yet another new day to live out together, Emmer looked beyond them into fields kissed by morning dew that mirrored their own intertwined reflections back at her, a vision of harmony between two lives embracing the beauty and uncertainty this existence offered with every breath taken in unison. Above all else was a simple truth they held close to their hearts. Love had always been about more than shared journeys or solace found within another. It existed as hopefulness woven into life's fabric, where even when seasons shifted like sands beneath tides unknown, the essence of love endured a beacon that would guide them through sunsets and dawn. In their union with James was discovered a promise renewed each day to find strength in vulnerability, embrace change as constant companion rather than foe, cherish every shared moment like precious jewels strewn along life's winding road or path that led them here amidst the quiet whisper of nature and their own intertwined destinies. And so they continued to walk together into tomorrow's promise as Emmer looked out upon fields once more illuminated by sunrise, now giving way before nightfall. Their love story etched not just within this earthly plane, but also woven intricately within a celestial manuscript where each chapter penned with their essence would endure even as they left behind footprints that time might one day erase from the sands of memory. But it mattered little to them. Emmer stood at their favorite spot by the brook, where waters murmured tales of old and new as they had done for years, her gaze fixed upon James, who knelt before a bed of wildflowers that danced to an unheard melody only nature knew how. It was here in this place, between Time-Phi's eternal now, when both the sun kissed their faces with warmth and nightfall wrapped them in cool embrace, where they shared stories whispered by generations before, tales of love lost and found beneath starlit skies echoing through ages, untouchable to mortal ears. Today felt like another turn on this cyclic journey as James gently brushed the petals aside, revealing the hidden message carved into wood or promise etched when their souls first met under an amber sky that seemed almost painted by divine hands for them alone. In every heartbeat and breath drawn together is our forever. Emma reached out with trembling fingers as James stood to read it aloud. Our love, he began, his voice a tender melody amidst the rustling leaves that carried their secrets far beyond this secluded grove where reality seemed suspended in perpetual twilight. They knew of no beginning, or not when they discovered each other on an evening painted with both despair and hope, not after weathering storms within themselves, but also against the relentless march outside their windows that sought to pull them apart as easily as it had brought them closer. In every heartbeat and breath drawn together is our forever, as they recited this oath of undying devotion for 1,000th time under countless suns. The brook before which Emmer stood appeared not just to reflect their union, but also as an ancient scribe recording history in rippling waters. It was said that at dusk, when moonlight caressed its surface and stars whispered, through reeds or transformation occurred, love took form beyond flesh or spirit. It became a force so pure all others paled into shadowy echoes of existence without purposeful connection, as the brook seemed to hum with their united resolve. But time is but an illusion within this tale where years and centuries are mere threads in vast tapestries woven by hands invisible. Thus, when seasons changed from blossoming springtime blooms to autumnal flames of golden hues, Emmer felt not the pang of loss, nor dread for what might come. Their love story was etched on horrors that crisscrossed skies and weaved through oceans deep as time itself offered no dominion over them. It mattered little to James when winters by turned fields into silent, white shroud-like tombs. He felt only the warmth of Emmer's love in her smile upon seeing how even snowflakes could form constellations against his ice or celestial dance that spoke promises as enduring as stars themselves. Within this realm where every moment was an eternity, James and Emmer learned to find strength, not only within their shared journey, but also in each other's solitude. They understood the power of silence when spoken words could fracture even stone. It had been a trial that honed them with love as both shield and sword. They found purpose beyond themselves, or promise renewed daily, like sunrise after nightfall, where horizon met sky without end in between their embrace, or apart. In every heartbeat and breath drawn together is our forever. The brook bore witness to this truth as it flowed through the land of eternal dusk. Emmer looked upon James with eyes full of twilight dreams. It was here they pledged, hand in hand beneath a sky that shimmered not just with light, but also untold tales from beyond a realm where love's promise never faded even as their footsteps left imprints on the sandy shore. In every heartbeat and breath drawn together is our forever. And so they continued to walk hand in hand into tomorrow's embrace with faith that not just this world, but also an unseen one held them within its tender grip. Their love story a tapestry of shared moments, where every thread was imbued with hope and courage for times unknown. In every heartbeat and breath drawn together is our forever. As day surrendered to night, they watched the stars ignite across the canvas above as their own hearts beat in harmonious symphony of love that transcended time's relentless march. In this world where past, present, and future meld into a single point beyond sight or touch, in every as twilight deepened into a velvet night, and Emma's silvery hair seemed to brush against her eyes, she leaned toward James with an affection that went beyond mere words, her hand finding his at last for comfort in their shared silence as they continued along the shore, with each step on hallowed ground, where love had been declared time and again under a sky both familiar yet endlessly mysterious to them. Emma's heart swelled within her chest like an undulating sea of stars reflected upon the water's surface that mirrored their own intertwined essences back at one another. "James," she whispered in his ear as they passed a cluster of candles glowing softly along the path, illuminating tiny ripples on the sand or testament to lives lived and moments cherished within these shores that held their promises close like treasured secrets. "Do you believe we could ever truly leave our mark here? Or is it just where I am now with every sigh of your lips? Each echoed laughter through this land." James smiled at her tender question and reached for hand to brush against hers as he gazed upon the sea that had been their witness since they met. "Emma," his voice carried soothingly amidst the gentle lapping waves, "our footsteps may not imprint on sand terminalized by time itself, but our essence shall remain in this place, and baned imprints of love made manifest through every shared experience." He continued to walk beside her as they meandered down a pathway lined with wildflowers that had bloomed under their care, each one symbolic of the promises exchanged on those initial steps. They paused before an ancient oak tree where time seemed irrelevant, its gnarled roots stretching like fingers grasping for stories untold, while leaves whispered tales in hushed tones only felt through touch and sight, her natural repository that held within it their own story, woven with threads of hopeful dreams. The couple found solace on the cusp between two worlds where dusk melded seamlessly into night's embrace while shadows danced along in a delicate ballet or performance orchestrated by an invisible conductor who knew exactly when to lead and retreat, never ceasing its eternal waltz. It was here that Emma spoke of their journey thus far. "Our love is like this tree before us. It began as just a seedling in the soil rich with potential, but has now become an entity whose branches reach upward or shared experiences, allowing for growth and strengthening roots, entwining ever closer to one another." Her eyes glistened beneath night's canopy of stars. James nodded thoughtfully at her reflection on their bond as it had blossomed within the embrace of this enigmatic realm or place where not only time seemed infinite, but also possibilities endless, stretching out like an unfurling fern frond towards sunlight that even now just kissed its tip. The moon's silver glow bathed them in a serene luminescence as they found themselves beneath the cascade of waterfall like clouds above, their laughter melding with rain's gentle patter on leaves and earth alike, creating an auditory tapestry that spoke to their souls. "Let us remember," Emma said softly while a raindrop traced its lone journey down the tip of her nose before landing upon cheek, where it joined countless others in forming rivulets across weather-worn bark and moss, "that every heartbeat shared between two souls bears witness to eternity itself." James embraced his love's words as if they were a warm blanket shielding him from the cool night air, his own breath syncopating with hers in rhythmical unity that pulsed through veins and coursed like lifeblood between their intertwined fingers. It was then he realized, perhaps even more profoundly than before, in every heartbeat and breath drawn together is our forever. And so they continued to walk hand in hand into tomorrow's embrace, with faith that not just this world, but also an unseen one held them within its tender grip. Their love story a tapestry of shared moments where each thread was imbued with hope and courage for times unknown, a testament etched upon the canvas of their souls which no mere mortal realm could diminish nor any temporal storm erase from memory or heartbeat. In every, as day surrendered to night once again in this world where past, present, and future as James and Emma walked hand in hand along their favorite path by the old forest, that had witnessed many seasons of laughter, love, sorrow, and joy within its embrace, their footsteps a gentle patter on leaves as soft as down, like whispers against one another's skin. The air around them held the subtle scent of petrichor mixed with their own shared memories, each fragrance threaded into moments that wove themselves indelibly upon their spirits and within every beat of their now intertwined hearts. They paused, not because they had forgotten how to move or speak, but simply as a means to breathe in the world. Todhura, a pause so natural it felt more like an affirmation than anything else for this couple who found themselves at once entirely apart and infinitely connected through their shared existence with one another. Emma's gaze lingered on her partner, finding solace not just within James, but also beneath his eyes that cradled wisdom beyond the years he had lived, so far a silent acknowledgment of each other's journey thus far as they sought a future yet unwritten together under nightfall stars mirroring their own twinkling love. "I often ponder upon our existence," James mused, his voice barely above a murmur that seemed to synchronize with the rhythmical rustle of leaves in response. "We are but transient beings within this vast tapestry, however brief or prolonged our threads may be." His fingers brushed against hers lightly as if tracing invisible patterns upon her skin, his touch a reminder that every second and minute had been cherished. Todhura, testament to their enduring affection. Emma smiled faintly at James's reflection on life's impermanence, yet unyielded permanence in moments shared. She knew the truth of this paradox as deeply as he did, but found a certain comfort, like old friends wrapped together beneath covers against an autumn chill that whispered promises of endless seasons. "We are more than just our past or future," Emma replied softly while her thoughts meandered through streams and rivers within the soul's landscape they had helped sculpt with their shared experiences, or topography as complex yet harmonious as nature itself, where every hill climbed was a challenge overcome together, and each valley traversed strengthened them against adversities. In silence punctuated only by heartbeats resonating in tandem like the pendulum of an old grandfather clock that had been present during their earliest encounters, her presence now seeming to sway less with time passing but more as a gentle reminder not just of moments lived, loved upon deeply into memory's vault. They continued walking onward, footsteps synchronized in such perfect unison they felt almost disjointed from the ground beneath them and simply moving through space. Todhura, an embodiment of their bond that transcended physical realms as surely as love itself had bridged two individual hearts into one harmonious whole. As twilight descended upon a day wrapped in countless hues, James whispered tenderly against the backdrop of an orchestra playing just for them, "We may not know what tomorrow holds beyond this world," he said as their shared breaths seemed to become one with the very air they breathed together. "But within us lies our eternity, and in every touch, look, sound, every sensation that courses through our veins lies a promise of forever." Emma reached out then for his hand, not just as an act of connection, but also to solidify their resolve against whatever might come. "Our love is the foundation upon which we build," she promised, "and within us lies strength, courage, and hope. These are our pillars, steadfast through storms or sunshine alike." James squeezed her hand in agreement as they continued to walk onward together into dusk's embrace, where only the stars could hear their whispered vows. As nightfall deepened, enveloping them within its comforting cloak, and painting it with shades of twilight pink that kissed blues goodbye, for no, it was time to find rest in shared dreams under watchful eyes, unseen yet ever present as silent guardians. And so they found their way back home, where walls had become the canvas upon which a story only love could write, a mural of moments lived and loved into memory's vault that no temporal storm erased from heartbeat or mind, or testament engraved not just on souls, but also in eternity itself. In every shared breath, "We are forever," James whispered against the backdrop of their bedrooms, gentle in chapter 28 of our tale, as night deepened and encased us within its comforting cloak woven from dreams beyond reach yet always just out of sight or time, when twilight pink had kissed blues goodbye for the eve, but promised to return anew with dawn's first light. Emma reached back into her memories, finding strength in their story's tapestry that neither sun nor shadow could erase. "Our love is not a mere word spoken under this sky, it echoes through time and space," she reflected as they walked hand in hand towards the door of home. With every step away from dusk's embrace, it felt like stepping into their shared future, each heartbeat in sync with another's, a symphony to fortify against uncertainties that lurked just beyond perception yet never touched upon fear within them. for love was not only present, but palpable. As they entered the haven of familiarity where warmth greeted their skin and walls stood witnesses in silent solace, James led Emmer to a place away from prying eyes that had often cast unwarranted shadows on tender moments, or small alcove adorned with flickering candlelight which seemed as much an invitation for spirits of kindred souls lost at sea. A blanket folded into the perfect size lay there, and soft music played from a hidden speaker that only added to their sense of secluded intimacy amidst familiarity's guise. Emmer drew nearer with each note's promise as she nestled against James in comforting proximity where no distance existed. "The stars outside are watching over us," he said, his voice low and steady like a lighthouse beacon through misty nighttime air, a reminder of the unseen guardians that kept vigilant watch without ever intruding upon their sanctum or demanding adoration for themselves. Together they swayed gently to an old waltz, each note lifting them further into a shared reverie where past griefs and present joys faded like the colors of day's last light. Only love's persistent rhythm remained in their hearts as constant companions through time. Emmer closed her eyes against his touch or gesture that spoke volumes more than words could convey, for it was an affirmation between two souls seeking refuge not from external storms or blissful sunshine alike, but within the shelter of enduring affection and understanding, a bastion fortified by their pledge to face whatever lay ahead in unison. James' fingers traced her pulse, echoing back through flesh like water upon stone a testament that resonated with an ancient promise. In every shared breath, "We are forever," he whispered against the soft murmur of night breeze slipping under their door as if inviting secrets to seek in and meld into dreams. And there, beneath a blanket woven from strands that seemed spun by starlight itself, or tableau vivid, where time's relentless march paused its pace for them, alone they surrendered themselves wholly unto the night's embrace, their bodies entwined as roots of two trees merging into one to stand against life's tempests. James reached out, his hand finding Emmer with a tenderness that defied language or even memory itself. In every touch and sigh shared under this roof, he murmured while wrapping her in the warmth she had come to crave as much as it did for him, each fold of cloth upon them holding echoes of laughter, whispers of yearning or mosaic that adorned their union with every tender act, as they curled together like a nest tucking into itself against the cold's unwelcome approach, while inside grew warmth and solace so rare in recent times, as if even now, within this cocoon of affection, no frost could find its way to touch the member side deeply. Her breath mingled with James' own in a dance too beautiful for mortal eyes or ears alone. "Our love is the foundation upon which we build," she promised as their figures huddled together, creating an impenetrable barrier against any unseen cold that sought to breach into this sacred space. The world outside continued its ceaseless cycle, unaware of two hearts in a shared dream where no storm could find room, not even the most tempestuous heart's fear or sorrow, for within their bond lay an indomitable strength, born not merely from love but faith, that together they were infinite. James